Hello, everybody. This is Devo here on Devo's Film Reviews, and this week's review will be The Punisher from 1989, starring Dolph Lundgren as The Punisher, Kim Mayori as Lady Tanaka, Lou Gossett Jr. as Jake Berkowitz, and Nancy Everhart as Sam Leary, and last but not least, Jerome Crabb as Johnny Franco. I'll say, excellent story for one of the most least comic accurate adaptations, which kind of one thing comic wise they actually got right was the bloody R-rated action. Cause yeah, if you're gonna do Punisher, you gotta be bloody and R-rated, cause he is not a kid-friendly character. No way, shape, or form. And in terms of the lack of comic accuracy, was how instead a lot of the characters were hardly ever in the comics, as far the ones I've read anyway. Although Lady Tanaka always sounded like was I mean Kimiori played such a badass villain to the point that her character should have been adapted later on, kind of like how DC did with Harley Quinn, with Harley being only in the at first being in the animated series from the '90s. Which, speaking of Batman, there was a funny line in this when he's after when Punisher gets captured and he says to the Lady Tanaka, after she says, "Who are you?" and he goes, "I'm Batman." It's kind of like an unscripted joke and all. I mean, right on ad lib too. After of course with this one being about how Punisher gets embroiled in a mob war between the mob and the yakuza after the beginning of the movie where this typical gangster got off scot free in a trial. Punisher didn't believe he was innocent, which is obvious. Oh, just annihilates the dude and his henchmen and all, just blew up the dude's compound. Oof. And then of course the whole shootout in the docks between the yakuza and the mob at the docks, with Punisher just popping in and out of nowhere, just capping gangsters left and right. Then, woof. And then you had Tanaka's daughter, who, who of course was a professional martial arts and had these little knife blades coming out of her shoes and all, almost kind of like trying to rip off Rosa Cliff from Russia with Love and all, with a martial arts twist. And of course, with one, even have to mention one Easter egg was like they had in one scene where they had the mafia guys having a meeting at some restaurant, which almost looked like the same restaurant from The Godfather. The scene where Michael shot Salasso, so almost looked like the same one. Even had an old twist where almost everybody but them were yakuza goons and all. And because when it comes to underrated villains, Lady Tanaka pretty much is a definite underrated one, and not just in comic book movies, but '80s action movies. Period. Because it's kind of very fitting that Punisher got a movie adaptation in the '80s, which is pretty much the golden era of action movies. And of course, there's a lot of lack of comic accuracy about the only thing they ever got right was the bloody violence and Frank Castle being the Punisher, but yet he didn't have longer version didn't have the skull and no mention of him being a Marine. And a missed opportunity to address his Vietnam War record too, because in the comics, Punisher is a Vietnam vet, but in the in the Burnfall adaptation got retconned to Iraq and Afghanistan. Which, unless Marvel Studio wants to do a period piece of it as an homage to that 1980s action movies in the 1980s, don't expect that aspect to be moved to be brought up in the MCU. Which the only flaw with that would have been taking out Burnfall, replacing Burnfall because he already did the Netflix adaptation. But excellent side characters too, with Lou Gossett Jr. When what I might as well say is pretty much one of my favorite Lou Gossett Jr. movie was in playing Jake Berkowitz, who was a comic, just a knockoff of Detective Martin Soap from the comics, with his partner Larry being kind of like the movie equivalent to Detective von Richthofen also from the comics, which those characters I'll mention later on when I'm doing Warzone. But this rest of this video will be strictly about 89 Punisher. Man, talking about some epic action scenes like at the beginning of the mob compound, the Yakuza shootout, the Yakuza casino shootout, where just Punisher just popped in with a big Rambo gun and just capped gangsters and just was shooting slot machines like they're tin cans and all. And man, and even the scene where he's rescuing the mafia kids, which is what roped him into Punisher out of his sabbatical from after taking some hits in the dock shootout. Because of course another thing they got right was as his motivation for vigilante the war on crime was the death of his family by the mob, of course. But like I said, the lack of reference to Vietnam or his Marine record and the skull I kind of found disturbing. But it did. But hey, at least it delivered on the action. And I kind of like the one retcon where instead of the battle van from the comic, he had the motorcycle and leather jacket and all, trying to be somewhere like Terminator. Although I kind of felt it was more like a vibe towards Stone Cold, and I'm talking about the Bosworth movie, not the wrestler, and Renegade, the cult 90s crime drama. And we'll talk about some, and back to a lot of epic scenes like Punisher raiding the one man raid on a Yakuza compound to rescue the mafia kids. All the ones except Johnny Franco's son, which later on in the movie, which was, of course, was the climax for the end of the movie. And of course, that chase scene with the bus and all, which I always kind of found it weird seeing Yakuza guys driving Ford pickups when you'd expect Yakuza to be too bougie for that. But hey, it's the 80s. And of course, when Punisher surrenders and then has this conversation with Berkowitz, who in this timeline was Punisher's ex-partner prior to the death of Punisher's wife and kids. And of course, a backstory about how Punisher of Castle got him sober from being a drunk on the job, being a crooked drunk to then of course Berkowitz had to tried to understand Punisher's side of what he was doing and all, only to get then he gets captured and escapes and all, and oof, even talking about hey, it ain't an badass action movie about a badass prison escape. Or I had like the Yakuza guys, I mean, scratch that. I mean the mafia, the Franco's boys trying to rescue Punisher, and Punisher reluctantly teams up with Johnny Franco to take out Lady Tanaka's crew, and talking about some badass scenes, like one where it had Punisher and Franco just pop out of an elevator, just take out a bunch of Yakuza guys training and all, which of course, as much as I love martial arts movies, Punisher kind of shares the sentiment of don't bring a knife to a gunfight, which is what those guys mostly did. Although there are plenty of Yakuza guys that used guns in this movie, but of course martial arts always got to be prevalent. And ooh, talk about an epic ending of when Punisher finally takes down Tanaka's daughter, and then has a fight with Franco at the end, and oof, which of course gives a lesson to Franco's son of saying don't follow in your dad's footsteps kind of speech. Which overall I'll give this about a 4 out of 5. I want to give it 5, but a stickler for accuracy, so, and was critically panned when it came out, because I've read some comics from the era, and the letters to the editor section, all toward Dolph Lundgren, the new asshole. That was, don't get me wrong, he was a perfect cast, although at first it was supposed to have been Christopher Lambert, aka Highlander, but Dolph Lundgren kind of fitted. Although I kind of thought Stallone would have been the perfect candidate for back then, but Lundgren knocked us out of the park just the same. I mean, come on. Lundgren's one of the greatest action stars ever. I mean, so of course he was one of the best Punishers ever. Though the least comic accurate adaptation, but a fun adaptation just the same. And of course, a definite must watch for Punisher. Still a must watch for Punisher fans, especially those who like to compare adaptations like yours truly and all. All right, y'all. I hope y'all like. Which, of course, I'm going to leave this as 4 out of 5. Which this gets a 4 out of 5 because I've already said all that, but trying to keep it at least transferred to where I don't get like a 13-minute thing. But hell, about got a 14-minute this time. So I hope y'all subscribe, like my video as much as y'all like the movie. Subscribe, and I'll keep dishing out the reviews. Enjoy, people.